Shreveport rocked this morning after Shreveport police discover 8 children were shot and killed and 2 women were also shot. One of those women is in critical condition tonight. This after a domestic incident on West 79th Street. Police within the past hour have confirmed the shooter is Shamar Elkins.
A father took his kids to church on Easter Sunday. All 7 of them were dressed up. Everyone was smiling. He posted the photo himself and wrote, "Had a wonderful time at church for the first time with all my kids. What a blessed day." 14 days later, 8 children were dead. And the man standing in that Easter photo was the one who killed them. This is not a story about a stranger. This is not a random act. This is a story about a household, a marriage falling apart, and a series of public warning signs that were right there for everyone to see, written out word for word on social media before any of it happened. This is Cases Decoded. And today we are covering the Shreveport, Louisiana mass shooting that took place on the morning of April 19th, 2026. The single deadliest mass shooting in the United States in more than 2 years. 8 children, all of them gone before 7 in the morning. Before we go any further, hit that like button right now, drop a comment below, and if you are not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. And I want you to tell me something in the comments. Tell me where in the world you are watching this from, and what time is it over there right now as you are watching. I always love seeing where this community is tuned in from. Now let's get into the story. Shreveport, Louisiana sits right on the Red River near the Texas state line. It is a working-class city, close-knit in the way that smaller cities often are, where people know their neighbors and word travels fast. Population just under 200,000. A city with deep roots and a community that is proud of where it comes from. The kind of place where people still sit on their porches, where people still check on each other, where something like this was never supposed to happen. Shamar Elkins was 31 years old. He grew up right there in Shreveport, and at some point in his adult years, he made the decision to serve in the United States Army. That is not a small thing. That is a man who put on a uniform, took an oath, and went wherever he was told to go. And when his service was done, he came back home. He came back to Shreveport, and he came back to a woman who had been waiting for him the whole time. Her name was Sheniqua. Back in 2016, Sheniqua posted a photo of Shamar in his army uniform. The words she chose were simple and straight to the point. She had been waiting for him to come home. That single post tells you a lot about where these two people began. She was committed to him. She was proud of him. She was planted in this relationship in a real and serious way. This was not a casual situation. This was someone who had decided he was her person. They stayed together for years after that. They built their life right there in Shreveport, the same city they both knew, the same neighborhoods, the same people around them. And then on April 9th, 2024, which also happened to be Sheniqua's birthday, they made it official. They got married. Sheniqua went on Facebook the same day and told the world about it. She wrote that they had finally made it official and that she got married on her birthday. You could feel the joy in those words just reading them. This was a woman who was happy about what was happening in her life. A woman who was proud to call herself his wife. By 2025, they had been together for a full 10 years and had 4 daughters together. Their marriage was still brand new at only 1 year old. And on April 10th, 2025, their first wedding anniversary, Sheniqua sat down and wrote about it on Facebook again. She thanked him for everything he had done to make the day special. She said she enjoyed every single moment of it. She looked back over 10 years and 4 daughters and she wrote about it like a woman who still believed in what they had. Past tense in the way you look back and feel good about where you are standing. Her words were warm. They were full. They were real. Now here is something important to understand about this family before this story goes any further. Shamar had children across more than one household. The 4 daughters he and Sheniqua had together carried the last name Elkins. But there were also other children from other relationships who carried the last names Pugh and Snow. 7 biological children total when you count across all the households. And from everything that was visible to the outside world, Shamar did not keep those different parts of his life separate. He posted about all of his children. He was photographed with all of them. Birthday parties, school events, holidays, he was present across the board. Whatever his private life looked like from the inside, the public version of Shamar Elkins was a father who showed up. That was the image. That Easter photo we started this story with? That was April 5th, 2026. All 7 of his children, standing outside a church, dressed up, clean and smiling. He captioned the photo himself by writing that he had a wonderful time at church for the very first time with all his kids. He called it a blessed day. That was 14 days before everything ended. 14 days. Here is what makes this case so painful to sit with closely. This did not come without signals. The signals were there. They were public. They were not hidden in private messages or whispered conversations between close friends. They were written out in full sentences with names attached on social media, where anyone following either of them could read every single word. And when you line those posts up in order, one after the other, the picture they paint is very hard to look away from. Let's go through them one by one, in order, exactly as they happened. Back in March 2026, Shamar shared a post from a Facebook page. The post was a question directed at fathers. It asked, if you could go back in time and have those same children, but with a completely different woman, would you do it? Shamar answered that question publicly, on his own personal Facebook page, in front of everyone who followed him. He was a married man. He had 4 daughters with his wife. And the answer he put out there was, and these are his own words, hell yeah, I would. Read that again slowly. He was a married man. And that was the response he chose to make public. For days after that post, on March 12th, Shamar put something else up. This one was short. No explanation, no story behind it, no context at all. Just 4 words. Understand to be misunderstood. 4 words and nothing else. But inside that house, inside that marriage, those 4 words meant something specific to someone. And when you read them now, knowing everything that followed, they land very differently than they probably did the day he posted them. Then April arrived. And this is where things started moving faster and the posts became impossible to dismiss. On April 8th, Sheniqua shared something. It was a quote, not her own original words, but she chose it and she put it on her page. It read, when a woman replaces you with peace and not another man, it is really over for you. She put that out 2 days before her first wedding anniversary. Then on April 10th, her anniversary, Sheniqua posted again. This time in her own voice, her own words, written out in full. She said that for the first time in her life, she did not want to be anyone's woman or wife. She said she knew what it felt like to pour into a man every single day. To cook for him, clean for him, share her bed, her space, her whole life, and still make sure everything at home was running the way it was supposed to run. She said she was tired of washing another man's clothes. She said she was done sharing her bed. She said she was done hearing what are we eating every single day. She said she was done adjusting her peace for anybody. She made it clear she was not bitter. She said she was simply done playing that role. She was choosing herself, her peace, her freedom, and she was not going to explain any of that to a single person. On her wedding anniversary, that is where she was emotionally on the day she was supposed to be celebrating another year of marriage. She was not hinting at something. She was not venting to one person privately. She was stating it out loud with her name on it, for the world to read. Then 3 days later, April 13th, she posted one final message. She wrote that the crazy part was that she did not even hate him. She said she just did not feel him anymore. She said the love had turned into lessons, and the lessons had turned into distance. And now that he was finally ready, she said she was finally done. She said that was what bad timing looked like. 3 posts, less than a week, each one more direct and more final than the last. Sheniqua was not going back and forth on this. She was not confused. She had reached the end of the road and she was saying so publicly, clearly, without hesitation. And Shamar was reading every single one of those posts. Now hold that thought, because of what came just days later. On April 17th, 2 days before the shooting, Shamar took his oldest daughter out for a one-on-one lunch date. Just him and her. He posted a photo of her in the car eating and wrote that he had to catch her off guard to make it happen. Reading that post on its own, he sounds like a playful, loving dad. A man just trying to steal a moment with his kid. That was the last post he ever put up with any of his children in it. 2 days later, everything changed. The call that came into Shreveport police in the early hours of April 19, 2026 was logged as a domestic disturbance. That is how it started. A domestic disturbance call. The kind of call that police departments in cities across the country receive dozens of times every single day. The kind of call that officers respond to regularly and have a whole procedure for. Nothing in the initial report suggested what investigators were actually about to walk into. By the time the scene was fully processed, across multiple addresses, in the early morning light, it had become the deadliest mass shooting of children in the United States in more than 2 years. Here is what the evidence showed once investigators pieced it all together. Shamar did not go to the house on West 79th Street first. He went to Harrison Street, a few blocks away from the main family home. That was where Sheniqua was that morning, not at the main residence, but at a separate address on Harrison Street. And that is where Shamar went first. He shot her there. Her injuries were severe. Police described them publicly as life-threatening. She had been shot in the head, but she was alive. What happened next is something that investigators and officers who arrived at that location struggled to put into words when they spoke publicly. These were men and women with careers in law enforcement. People who had responded to violent scenes before, people who had seen things most people never encounter in their lifetimes, and they stood in front of cameras and said they had never seen anything like this in their entire careers. 7 children were found inside that house. 1 more child was found outside, in the outdoor area behind the property. All 8 of them were gone. 7 of the 8 were Shamar's own biological children. The children he had posted photos of. The children he had taken to church on Easter Sunday 2 weeks earlier. The children whose names he had put under smiling photos on his social media page. The 8th child was their cousin. A child who happened to be there that morning. A second adult woman was also shot at the West 79th Street location. She too was in critical condition by the time police arrived. The only person who made it out of that house alive was a 13-year-old boy. He got out by jumping from the roof. He did not come down a staircase. He did not walk out a door. He jumped. He sustained injuries from the fall, but he survived. And that same boy, injured, terrified, having just witnessed something no child should ever have to see, is the one who called the police. That phone call is the only reason investigators knew what had happened and where to go. After leaving West 79th Street, Shamar drove away from the scene and carjacked a vehicle at the corner of that same street and Linwood Avenue. Shreveport police located the car quickly. A chase began, moving through Shreveport, crossing the parish line, pushing into neighboring Bossier City. The chase ended when officers opened fire. Shamar Elkins was pronounced dead at the scene. Louisiana State Police stepped in and took over that part of the investigation. When all of it was tallied, investigators found themselves working across 4 separate crime scenes. The Harrison Street residence where Sheniqua had been shot, the 2 locations on West 79th Street, and the site in Bossier City where Shamar was shot by police. Chris Bordelin of the Shreveport Police Department said publicly that it was one of the most extensive and complex crime scenes the department had ever been required to process. By any national measure, what happened that morning in Shreveport was something the country had not seen in years. In a single morning, it doubled Shreveport's total homicide count for the entire year. When the Caddo Parish Coroner's Office finished their work and formally identified all 8 children, these were the names that came back. Sheniqua Elkins, 3 years old. Shayla Elkins, 5 years old. Breland Snow, 5 years old. Kadarian Snow, 6 years old. Kayla Pugh, 6 years old. Layla Pugh, 7 years old. Mark Aiden Pugh, 10 years old. Soraya Snow, 11 years old. The youngest was 3. The oldest was 11. I want you to sit with those names for a second, because it is very easy when we cover cases like this to keep moving, to keep the pace going, to get to the next part of the story. But these were 8 real children. 8 kids who woke up that morning, who had breakfast, who had their whole lives ahead of them. Shayla was 3 years old. Shayla and Breland were 5. These were babies. People started gathering outside the house on West 79th Street before the sun was even fully up. Neighbors came out. Strangers came out. People who had no connection to this family at all but who lived in Shreveport and felt the weight of what had just happened in their city. People stood in the street and cried, wailing open, raw grief. From people who barely even knew these children's names yet. People were wailing in the street. There is no other way to say it. Open, raw, uncontainable grief from people who had just gotten the news about what had happened on that block. Shreveport Mayor Tom Arsenault was at the scene from early in the investigation. He addressed the community directly and described it in his own words as maybe the worst tragic situation the city of Shreveport had ever faced. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry issued a public statement that same day saying he and his wife were heartbroken. He thanked the law enforcement officers and first responders who were working the scene. The Shreveport Police Department confirmed that before April 19th, they had one previous documented interaction with Shamar Elkins. When investigators went back and looked carefully through that history, there was nothing in it. Nothing on record, nothing flagged, nothing that pointed in this direction. That would have led anyone to predict what he was capable of doing on that morning. 10 days before the shooting, on April 9th, Shamar had shared a prayer post on Facebook. A long one. He was asking God to guard his mind and his emotions. He put it out publicly. And 10 days later, those same children from the Easter photo, the children he had prayed over, the children he had smiled next to outside a church, they were gone. There is no version of this story where we walk away with easy answers. There is no clean explanation that wraps this up and makes it make sense. Because it does not make sense. 8 children are dead. A mother is fighting to recover from a gunshot wound to the head. A 13-year-old boy jumped off a rooftop to survive. An entire city of people woke up that morning and went to sleep that night as completely different people than they were before they heard the news. Shreveport will carry this forever. But there are things this case puts in front of us that are worth looking at honestly. Things that need to be said out loud. The moment Sheniqua started putting those posts up in April, she was communicating something very specific and very clear. She was not on the fence. She was not going back and forth. She had made up her mind, she knew it, and she was saying it publicly for anyone who cared to read. When a woman says she is done playing that role, that she is choosing her peace, that the love turned into lessons and now she is finally finished, that is not a woman who is testing the waters. That is a woman who has already crossed the line in her own mind and is simply living in the new reality she has decided on. And research on domestic violence patterns is extremely consistent on this one point. The most dangerous moment in a volatile or controlling relationship is not the worst fight. It is not the loudest argument or the most heated confrontation. It is the moment when one partner makes the decision to leave. That transition from together to separate is statistically and consistently the point of highest risk. When one person decides they are done, something inside the other person sometimes responds in ways that go beyond what anyone around them predicted. That is what happened here. Sheniqua communicated that she was done. Shamar did not respond by walking away, seeking help, or accepting what she had decided. He responded by going to where she was with a weapon. And then he went to where the children were. There will be people who knew Shamar who will say this does not match the man they knew. Neighbors had already said he was a good and present father before April 19th. That may be true. But being a present father and having something deeply wrong underneath the surface at the same time are not things that cancel each other out. People can show up for their children and still be carrying something inside them that has never been properly addressed. Pain, control, and unwillingness to accept loss that none of the people around them ever had full access to. What we do know is this. The warning signs were public. They were sitting right there on a Facebook page. And in cases like this, across the country and around the world, the conversation about what to do with those warning signs is still one that communities have not fully figured out. If there is one thing this story asks of every person watching it right now, it is this: pay attention to the people around you. When someone close to you is showing signs that something is building, that something is not right, take it seriously. When someone you care about is trying to leave a situation and you can sense that the other person is not handling it well, check on them. Get involved. Make the call. Do not wait until something becomes a headline before you act. Sheniqua survived. She is recovering. The road ahead for her, physically, emotionally, in every possible way, will be long. She lost her children. She nearly lost her own life. and she will spend the rest of her life carrying the weight of April 19th, 2026. The 13-year-old boy who jumped from that roof survived. 8 children did not get that chance. Jayla, Shayla, Breelon, Kadarian, Kayla, Layla, Mark Aiden, Soraya. Say those names. Remember those names. If you are watching this right now and something about this story lands close to where you are in your own life, your own relationship, your own household, someone you love, please reach out before things get worse. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available every single hour of every single day at 1-800-799-SAFE. You can also text the word START to 88788. You do not need to be in immediate danger to make that call. You can call right now, today, because something feels off. That is enough of a reason. That was the story of what happened in Shreveport, Louisiana on the morning of April 19th, 2026. 8 children, Jayla, Shayla, Breelon, Kadarian, Kayla, Layla, Mark Aiden, and Soraya, lost their lives in a matter of minutes at the hands of the man who was supposed to protect them. Their mother is recovering. Their community is grieving. And a city that was already familiar with hardship is now carrying something it will never fully put down. If this episode gave you something, if it made you think harder, feel something real, or want to share it with someone who needed to hear this story, please hit that like button right now. Leave a comment below. And if you have not subscribed to Cases Decoded yet, do that right now so you do not miss a single episode. And I want to know where you are. Drop your location in the comments right now. Tell me what city, what country, what part of the world you are watching from, and tell me what time it is over there right now as you are watching this. I genuinely want to know who is out there in this community and where you are all coming from. This is Cases Decoded. I will see you in the next one.